Middle East, and we sit down with them. We sit down with them, we learn from their experiences, and we talk about common strategies to accomplish our common goals. And we are also part of the Women's March. We are part of Kurdish Women's Alliance, which these two really accomplished women are also part of. In Turkey, we are part of initiatives. For instance, there's one called Women Strong Together. So we built an alliance, a sort of a network of women, again, to accomplish gender equality, to sort of push the government to initiate a peace process for the Kurdish question. We are also part of Women's Initiative for Peace. So that's one of the things that is more relevant for this panel's discussion. We are part of World Social Forum. So in general, it is a part of women's work. But again, I want to mention more about what we do as TGA, Tevgere Jene Nazad, the Free Women's Movement. We organize campaigns, and each campaign aims at changing the society, transforming the society. For example, you're familiar with honor killings. So we had a campaign in the past saying that, end to honor killings. We had a campaign about men declare women as their honor. So we did something about that. We had a campaign for freedom of Kurdish people. So it's through these campaigns, we engage with different parts of society and we change them and we accomplish these goals. One significant example from Bakur would be the Peace Mothers. So in the Kurdish tradition, as you know, if women throw this white scarf that they have during a fight, it means that, stop this fight. And that throwing of that white scarf would stop the fight. So we have these mothers, peace mothers, who have lost their children to the war. They are mothers of PKK militants. But these mothers also engage with the mothers of Turkish soldiers who also have been killed in the conflict. So they have this initiative between mothers, and they talk about peace, they talk about solutions. I remember back in 2009, there was a social forum in Diyarbakir in Ahmed, and we had soldiers' mothers in this forum, and they were talking about how they are so willing to let go of this history, this pain, just to move forward, just to accomplish peace, so that they are willing to make this big sacrifice, and they were asking for the state to make a similar one. So diplomacy is part of most of our work. You're familiar with genealogy, which is the science of women. It also, through this research, it actually tries to communicate and, build relations with the academic world out there that does gender studies. We have a special specific women's news agency. Jinha, again, engages with women journalists across the region. So it's multi-layered, the way that we engage in terms of diplomacy. And I think the state is aware of that. It's aware of women's role in diplomacy. And that is why it is imposing travel bans. For instance, recently, we had Ayşe Güldoğan, who is a member of PACE, Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, through our party. And she was supposed to travel to Strasbourg for the council for this assembly, and she wasn't allowed. Her passport still had this blocking from the Interior Ministry, and the same goes for TGA activists. They often are denied visa or they're denied passports. So we're forced to explore new ways to do diplomacy and to engage in foreign relations. Maybe I could make a quick intro and let other friends speak.
Well, that's a wonderful introduction. And what a compelling story you've told of mothers on two different sides of this conflict coming together over the shared tragedy of losing their children, to the potential for academic outreach between different kinds of people doing research on advancing women's rights and freedoms. That's all fascinating. And so I want to turn from that to a different kind of political experience. Treefa, if you'd like to go next and talk about women in diplomacy in Bashur, in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, the only part of Kurdistan to have a formal autonomous status, which is something quite different than Kurds in Bakur and Kurds in Rojava have.
Thank you so much, Megan. And I want to begin by thanking the Kurdish Peace Institute for hosting this important event today in honor of International Women's Day in Diplomacy. As a Kurdish woman, I'm very proud of my heritage and my long career in the pursuit of justice and freedom and peace. I'm a daughter of long history and parents that are very patriotic, who fought for freedom and peace in the early 60s and 70s in the movement and Kurdish revolution in Iraq. And even though I was a child when I came to the United States, I think that background definitely led to my interest in politics and in justice. And that has formed my long career in both the political realm and in the legal realm. So thank you for inviting me. Yes, we do have a long history in the Kurdistan region of Iraq for fighting for our rights, for our freedom, for our peace and stability. And women have always been a part of that movement. It is not a movement of men where women were just sitting home taking care of, the children and the family. They were part of the fighting force, a part of our Peshmerga forces. So they were integral part of this movement for greater Kurdish autonomy, Kurdish rights, and therefore that history lend itself very easily for the formation eventually of the Kurdistan Regional Government and the role of women in that government, in addition to non-government roles. And so for us, I think it was a natural development to create a specific agency, a department and ministry within our government for women in development, which is very unique in our part of the world and maybe across the globe. And this High Council on Women in Development is dedicated specifically on women's issues, not just around women or gender-based violence, but in the promotion of their economic entrepreneurship, in how they're treated in our society, in the legal system, in the cultural framework. So that is a strong indication of this commitment of our government on women's rights. We also have a quota in our parliament that 30% of the parliamentarians are women. And we're very proud of that record, and they represent not just members or parliamentarians, but that they are also in leadership roles. So we've had several female speakers of the parliament. We have one currently, despite the fact that it is defunct as of now, but we have always had sort of a strong presence of female leadership and empowerment in our society, with organizations within our political parties, within civil society, within our educational, academic institutions. And as I said, as a female Kurdish American, I was born in Iraq, but raised in the U.S., another indication of the strong commitment towards the role of women is I started my political career in my early 20s as the representative of one of the major political parties, the Kurdistan Democratic Party, here in Washington. I inaugurated the office, and there was both challenges and reward for that. But as you can imagine, in a very patriarchal system, not just in our culture, but in politics and in diplomacy, where it's very male dominated, you can imagine a young, Kurdish female in her early 20s representing a major political party, and how I was received, and how the community sort of were very hesitant about why this young girl who doesn't have the experience or the background in a long, political career was chosen for that role. But it shows just the, I think, progressive thought, the commitment, and the really pragmatic approach of having a female voice representing a very traditional political party, very dominated by males, in a region dominated by males, but having that as the voice in Washington and the United States of America is a strong indication of how they are very supportive and committed to women leadership and empowerment. So I'll stop there and wait for additional questions.
And that's wonderful, and it's great to see that effort to, break down barriers and lead. That's so common to the story of so many women in Kurdish politics, diplomacy, and otherwise. And Ceylan, now over to you for that question on the role of women in diplomacy and peace building in Rojava.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Megan. Thank you for the KPI for inviting me today. I'm honored to have the panel today discussing with the significant figures or significant women today. It is really a very complicated issue when we talk about the women in the Middle East, especially. Now, let me start from the just before the Arab Spring, as they call it, the Arab Spring, which hit the Middle East, many countries like Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya, Syria, whatever. So as we see the beginning of all this protesting, we can see in the protesting in the street, the women, they went out to the street. They were most of the pictures you can see in front of the protesting people, they were women. Most of them, they were women. But after later that, when they go to the negotiation, when they started to have a political negotiation and solution, at the table, you can't find any woman. They didn't invite a woman to this table. Why? Because the men, they were dominated all the political and diplomatic process, actually. And this is what makes us, in Northeast Syria and the Kurdish people in the beginning, to notice all this happening. And we worked on that so that the woman could be a very major voice to be heard in the policy and in diplomacy. So actually, the movement of the women started even before the Arab Spring. But later on, when the Arab Spring comes, the women they were a little bit ready, actually. The Kurdish women, they were ready more than the others there, comrades there in Syria. So we started to work together for the women together, to empower ourselves together, and to get many laws in Northeast Syria and in Rojava to protect the women from the domestic violence. During the war, a lot of issues come up with the women. Violence against the women, they lost their husbands or their families. They would be alone. They would be having a lot of problems. So for that, we think, how can we protect the women in Syria, in Northeast Syria, by having the law to protect these women from domestic violence? This is number one. Then later on, we worked on empowering the women. And we have the constitution, or let us say the social contract, which have the women participating in all the governing body, not less than 40%. This is another issue that makes the woman, just believe in herself now. Sorry. After that, we see that the woman should take her role in this revolution in Syria. It is not just a military revolution. It is a social revolution. And that's what happened. So we have the women participating in all the government. We have the co-chair system, which we have men and women. They were in each body in the governing system in Rojava, in administrating administration in the northeast Syria. So now we can see that we empower the women, and now the women, they are taking their role and playing a very pivotal role in diplomacy and policy. In the beginning, let me tell, even if there is a co-chair system, it was so difficult to work with the men that have the mentality, I always call it the male mentality. It's so difficult. I will tell just on my experiences in the beginning when we started to have the dialogue and we started to have the meeting with the officials either in Europe or in Arab countries. We were like a delegation, men and women. So I was the only woman in that delegation. So I recognize that even the European side, they will take the man more seriously than a woman. So that is what makes me really a little bit angry. Why? We are in Europe and we can talk, but they will not listen to you as they are listening and taking the man who is speaking more seriously. This is which makes me more to work more and to develop myself and to work on myself to be able to show that even the women can talk and can speak and can analyze in politics even more than a man. And we have, many researchers, they say that, they suggest that the women diplomats tend always to the more inclusive, more fostering the dialogue. And the woman involvement is linked to the more durable peace agreement. So that means the woman could play a very pivotal and unique role in peace agreement, in dialogue, in diplomat, policy, whatever. So this is the issue that I practiced this experience in the beginning. So when in the meeting, when a man he speaks, then after that he say, okay, Syria, she can speak about the woman issue. No, I'm not only, concerned on the woman. Of course, it is important for me, but I can speak about policy. I can speak about other things also. Why not? So this is, it makes you to struggle, with the men, with the male mentality actually, in order to have your position at the table or in negotiation, or even to have a high position. Till now, we have a lot of challenges, of course, in our society as a Middle East society. We have the cultural challenges, we have the social challenges, we have economy, whatever. You have a lot of issues. So if your family is not supporting you, if you're surrounding you, they are not supporting you, you will not be able to continue. And this is what I would like to thank even my family who supported me through all my working through 13 years now. I'm away from my family. I'm working for my people, for in diplomacy, in politics. And this is what I'm proud of that. But still, we are working now and having a lot of difficulties, as Ceylan said, that we are not representing a state. This is another difficulties we actually face. For instance, when we go to Europe to meet somebody, they look at you are not representing any state, but you are just, as an organization, whatever. So they will meet you not officially in their, for instance, in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They will meet you in a public place, in a cafe, whatever. But after, in the beginning, we accept that. But after that, we didn't, because we had sacrificed a lot of people, and women actually, in fighting against terrorists. After the image of the women who fight against terrorists displayed in all over the world, and even everyone, they saw it, and this is what gives us more powerful now, to say, we want to meet with you officially. And this is what happened. And now we are meeting with everyone, either in Europe and even here in America officially. in the State Department or in the Congress or whatever. So this takes a long time, you know, and takes a lot of struggle and victims, so to reach to this level now. I can say, I mean, always we say that the diplomacy, formal diplomacy, as I mentioned, is dominated by men, always dominated by men. And they will say, oh, women, don't touch it. That is not for you. You can do something else. You can do a humanitarian organization. You can do something for the social issues, but it is not yours. This, don't touch that. This is what the men wanted the women to be away from diplomacy, away from politics. And this is what we did not accept. We insist to have our role as a woman in Rojava, in the north of Syria, to work together. Now, not only Kurdish women, we have now the Arab women, we have the Syriac also. They have, most of them, they are co-chaired in northeast Syria in the administration. So now, when the women empower themselves, they will be working together to empower the other women also, as it happened in Syria. So it is not only with the Kurdish women, no, we empower the Arab women together to face all the challenges that we have, still we have it in Syria and all the women in the Middle East. But really, we could achieve a lot of successful issues that we could now be here in America, in Washington, working as a representation. I work in Europe as European representation for the autonomous administration for more than 5 years. And that also takes me, I mean, a lot of experiences in politics and diplomats. So I would always say that women, if they have the opportunity, they have to prove themselves, and they can do more than even the men. If the women were able to fight and to defeat ISIS, they will be able to even work in diplomacy and in politics very successfully. Thank you so much.
That's so true. And I think something that's true in all three of the contexts that all of you come from is that role of women in fighting and defending their people from state oppression and from terrorist groups like ISIS was part of what changed attitudes in society when communities saw that if women could resist authoritarian regimes and brutal religious fundamentalist groups, that they'd be capable of taking on other roles in society too. I think that's a commonality across all parts of Kurdistan. And so all of you got a bit into this in your sort of opening remarks, which I love, but I want to ask specifically, you know, as Kurdish women working as diplomats, you face two sets of obstacles. As women in the male-dominated field of diplomacy, and I might add, even in the United States, it's a very male-dominated field, as anybody here who's ever sat in a meeting with the State Department will know. And as representatives of a people without a state of their own, in an international system that remains dominated by powerful nation states. So if you could each share a story of a challenge that you faced because of these inequalities and the ways in which you've worked to overcome them, as well as the lessons that you've learned from these experiences. And then I think in terms of the order for the panel, I just have been going alphabetically by last name. So we'll do the same order as last time. So Ceylan, back to you.
I don't know if I could come up with just one story. I could write a book about it, but maybe in the future. But I just want to start with a small anecdote and just move forward with the example. A few months ago, I gave a speech in Parliament that got a lot of good reaction, but also bad reaction, where I was talking about, you know, being the child of a cleaning woman who, you know, saw economic difficulties, the child of a displaced farmer. And I was talking about that experience, and some people in their comments said, oh, I don't believe this story, because how could the child of a cleaning lady and a displaced farmer be a member of parliament? And I think that's the power of Kurdish women's movement, and that's the power of the Kurdish movement in general. It could take any of us, and it could make something out of any of us. And it gives us that space and that power, especially as us women who are considered, and I'm going to say quote unquote, a minority women. So we come with a disadvantage, and that means we have to prove ourselves twice. There's a lot of judgment. Our capacities are always questioned. I often get the question from Kurdish men who say, well, wasn't there a smart male lawyer out there that could have been an MP instead of some of you women? And I get that question a lot. And I say, why? Don't you think my IQ is high enough to do this job? And when we go outside, when I engage in diplomatic interactions, when I have to travel outside for the party, on behalf of the party, I often meet with counterparts who have been bullied by Turkey before my arrival. So they would always say, well, we want to sit down with you. Yes, you are a legally, officially elected member of parliament. But if I sit down with you, Turkey will not meet with me. And the last time I heard that response was 3 days ago. And I was in this Parliamentary Assembly of Southeastern European countries. And this country, I will not name, is very famous for self-determination. And I said, you know what, I really want to hear about your experience. And it was another woman politician. And I said, we would like to invite you over to our maybe panels and some other events. And she said, you know what, I love it. And I've done it once. And when I did it, the Turkish ambassador stopped accepting me. He wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't pick up my phone. So I can't do it. So we have to work around different bullying networks to find our way, to make our way. And in a recent trip about a month ago, again, I was traveling on behalf of the party, and I was met with a little bit of hesitation from the representatives of this country to meet with us because they weren't sure how Turkey would receive them in the coming weeks and months. And so judgment and also being omitted from meetings is another experience that we have to go through, like with the Parliamentary Commission. In the previous term, they wouldn't include our MPs in the international visits, these foreign affairs visits. So we had to push our way into these. We have to fight against these investigations and prosecutions, which sort of result in the cancellations of our passports. So we have to stay vigilant in the face of that. So when it comes to challenges, it's really, it's a long list. But again, and in all of these, I find that being part of the women's movement, being part of the Kurdish Free Women's Movement, that always finds a way to go around the block, make that contact, even if we have to take the longer route, we always make that contact, and it always reaches the goal.
Well, I do hope that you choose to write that book someday with your stories. Treefa, over to you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think my response will be very much in line with the other panelists on just a general female perspective, not specific either to me or to who I represent or even to our culture. Yes, everywhere around the world, women have to work harder. They have to prove themselves. Men and even, I would say, sometimes other ladies are very doubtful about why you're in that role, how you achieved that role. There's, unfortunately, a lot of slander or your reputation that puts you in question. And for the most part, if you want to be serious in this field and have a long career, you have to have a very strong backbone and not allow these kind of sentiments to get to you. So you have to have like a strong sense of yourself. And so I would say generally those are the common challenges. And the other disappointing, I would say, thing is, having been raised in America, I would say America is, I would say, a little bit more progressive when it comes to women in leadership roles and empowering them in various sectors. today, if you go to the State Department, and this happened to me a year ago, before I came to this position, I was working in Erbil in Kurdistan, and I came with an Iraqi delegation headed by the Iraqi foreign minister, and the entire delegation were men. I was representing the KRG, and I was the only female, which is very typical. But I will tell you that when we had our first meeting with leaders at the State Department, the entire table of the American diplomats were women. And it was a stark contrast between one side of the table, all American female diplomats, the other side, all Iraqi diplomats. And because of the large delegation, I sort of sat at the head of one of the tables. So I was like Sweden in between, the Kurdish representative in between the Americans and the Iraqis. And somebody made a comment like, wow, look at the stark contrast. And I joked, yes, but it's the Kurds who have a woman as their representative. So I made that point. But the sad truth is, I think it's the challenges come from more from our own people, much more from our Kurdish society in terms of the challenges of female in a leadership role. I can say honestly that I haven't had a lot of challenges from others, particularly in the US government or non-government actors. So sometimes I think proving to your own society, your own culture, that you are just as effective and as capable as a male is a lot of hard work. But I think the more successful or the more you are able to produce, some of that dies down from the beginning. But it continues, I think, to be a challenge for all women all over the globe, not necessarily just Kurdish women and not necessarily just in the Middle East, but we have some, as Sinem Khan said, extra challenges in the Middle East regarding the role of women in politics and diplomacy.
Again, what
Thank
a
you.
great story. Yeah, and I think that anytime you see an all-women delegation or an all-women panel, that's a total win. I have some friends and colleagues from some of our women, peace and security groups on here watching, and I know that that's always what we're looking for. So yeah, Sinem, how about you? Same question.
I think we have common things together, all facing. But in general, when we say the challenges that the women have when practicing politics or diplomacy, first of all is the gender bias. This is one of the issues that we always, look at it. And the other one is the underrepresentation for the women to be in the top position. This is also what we see it in the world. Some countries, they say, oh, we are still not ready to have a woman as a president, for instance, of the country. This is very important. And I participate in many conferences for the Women Conference in Europe, and it was international conferences. And always I say, look at the picture in any international meetings, for instance, you can see the picture of all of them men, except few women with the dress in the middle of this. Why? Where are the women? So for that, I say, if we have Mr. President, we always hear the word of Mr. President, Mr. President. Why don't we have one day Mrs. President also? Why? It is not, is it easy? It's not easy. Is it the woman is not qualified for that position? I don't think, it is not. So the woman could play a very good and great role as president at a high position, and she could also make peace more than the woman, because the mentality of the woman, she agrees the dialogue, she agrees the more of the, having the inclusive, more than the man whose mentality tend toward the war more, for that, I think the challenges, that challenge we have the social challenges, which we have it in our societies everywhere in the Middle East. Always they will look at a woman less, you know, than the man. This is what we always see in our society. But really in Northeast Syria, as I mentioned, we struggle a lot in order to have such a position. I mean, now we make the women in diplomacy our priorities. And look at now in Northeast Syria, we have many women, they played such role in diplomacy now. And they are leading the diplomacy in Northeast Syria. And we have now Arabs also together, the Arab women. Of course, the Kurdish women started as a pioneer for this project. And then after that, if you as a woman worked as a Kurdish woman alone, you will not be successful. If you want to get to the peak or the head of the mountain, you have to get the other women with you in order to be successful. So for that, if you want to build a society which is successful, you have to have and support the other women with you, like the Arab women, especially the Arab women, they have a lot of differences in their social, society as a tribal society. It is very difficult for them. For instance, we have the law of the polygamy, which is, in Rojava and Northeast Syria. But this law, you can't implement it in the tribal issues. That is difficult, you know. So it takes maybe time. It takes time to convince the people about that. But now you are not doing that for instance, in Deir Zor, in any other cities would have a very tribal issue. This is another issue. I will just, I can mention one story. It was really very, I was in Rojava in 2014 or 15, I think. So that time I met with the governor of the Rojava. He was the Arab tribe, Shumer. He died now, peace be upon his, soul. He is the Hamd Hadi, Shumer. So I went to his, governing building. So he was just talking, what are you doing in Europe? And we were just discussing. Then he said to me, do you know what? The most difficult thing I faced in this, while governing and be a governor in Northeast Syria, because he was the governor and he has a co-governor because he has another woman with him, co-chair. He said to have a woman co-chair with me. As an Arab tribes, we never have such a thing. We have the sheikh, that means the president of the tribes. And we don't accept a woman to be a co-president with us. But now in this system, really, I am very proud that I have another woman with me as a co-governor in this, administration. So this is, it gives you a sign that changes in the society is possible. It takes time, but it is also possible. So I can say the other also challenges the women they can face is the economic challenge, which is the most, even important. If the woman, she doesn't have the economy, we should not always support the woman in politics, but in economy, because economy and politics are related to each other. So if we support the woman how to build her own economy, that she will be free and she will be able to work more and more in every sector of in the society. So for that, I think she will not be always under-dominated by the man because she needs him in economy. No, she will have her free, independent, economy, and that time she will be work more, successfully and free. This is what I can say about, the challenges. Maybe the other challenges I can say, in our society, again, when you start to work in the beginning, as I mentioned, for instance, in a conferences, there are a lot of men, and you are, as Ms. Treefa, she mentioned, you are the only woman in that conference, you know, in the meeting. So all the other side of the meeting, they will look at you, who will be starting speaking? A man or the woman, the only woman? So I will start speaking, and they will be always looking at you, oh, good, that is, they have somebody to speak as a woman, and the other men, they are all listening, and they will be agreeing. So this is something, you know, we have a challenge in that, and till we arrive or we reach to achieve such, I mean, things in our work, in diplomat, in policy, and even in other sectors in Rojava. So in Rojava now we built our system, the system which is, I mean, having the law against violating the women in the society. And so we built this system from the down to the top. So we have the women councils, we have the women house, we have the municipalities co-chair system, the government co-chair system, and even in the military also. We can see in the SDF, we have the commander, like Commander Nawrouz Ahmed and General even Mazloum Abdi. So even in defense, you have seen that the women could achieve a lot of victories, especially in fighting against the most brutal terrorist group in all over the world, that threat all over the world. And I think the Kurdish women could protect whole the world from this terrorist group. Thank you.
Absolutely brilliant observations there. And I think, again, you know, that point on the economy is something that has been mentioned in the context of Bakur and Bashar as well. Economically empowering women is very important, and that could be, it seems, an area where different Kurdish entities could even collaborate and share lessons learned. There's so many amazing remarks from all of you. We could have entire other panels on the points that you're bringing up. But before we get to the Q&A, I do have one last prepared question. And so the United States has a Women, Peace and Security National Action Plan, which I believe you're all aware of, and many of our listeners here are aware of as well as other policies and structures that are intended to support the work that women like yourselves and many of your colleagues and counterparts in the region are doing. Unfortunately, though, we don't always see these high-level strategies translate into policy on the ground. So what I'd be interested in hearing from all of you for our last question here is, in your opinions, how can the US best use existing women, peace and security and gender policy frameworks to empower Kurdish women and women in Kurdistan and the region to promote regional peace and security? Ceylan.
I was actually thinking about that question after seeing this video of Hezbollah groups, which is Turkish Hezbollah, not the Hezbollah we're familiar with, but the Hezbollah groups recently have been going in like restaurants and coffee shops in Ahmed and just chanting this slogan called Cenk, Jihad, Shahadat. So they're saying war, jihad, and martyrdom. And so as you could hear, it sounds like a certain something, right? It sounds like Jinjian Azadi, and they're finding alternatives to that. And they have been going after this slogan specifically by targeting women mayors, co-mayors of the Dem party, and also women politicians, you know, us. And, you know, these recent moves have been funded by the Turkish state, which is a critical ally, a NATO ally of the United States. So this party that gets no fund from the state treasury somehow ended up with lots of funds and, you know, showing up in critical parts of our towns and provinces and districts. And I think this shows that the US needs to hold its partners accountable. when it comes to ensuring gender equality, peace, and resolutions to conflicts. The other project would be, the other option would be, they are providing a lot of aid for friendly countries, which they consider, at least Turkey, I'm speaking for my case here at least, for Turkey to be a friendly country, but they do not hold Turkey accountable. The last time they did that was with the Katsa sanctions, but I think those are slowly easing up, and they are, making it much easier for Turkey to go again rogue against U.S. interests and generally the interests of different identities and societies in this region. And I have to say, there have been a great regression in women's rights in terms of Turkey. The withdrawal from the Istanbul Convention was one step, and the increase in violence against women has been another step. Just today, it has been about 24 hours and 8 women have been killed by men, which in the cases of, gender-based violence. And this shows a critical approach from the Turkish state towards women. And I think in terms of this particular project, very important that they don't do the same mistakes. The US doesn't do the same mistakes it did with Afghanistan by not including women in critical positions, by not supporting its partners in putting women or helping women or letting women, take their well-earned positions in this in this governing positions, so that there's a lasting peace. Otherwise, it's going to be shaky, and it's going to be, the cases of Taliban taken over in one day.
Absolutely, and I think something I've written about a great deal in a lot of my research is the fact that a peaceful resolution to the Kurdish issue in Turkey isn't necessarily just a minority rights issue, it's also a women's rights issue, because you have Kurdish women fighting for equality in ways that benefit Turkish women, all women in Turkey, and then the most pro-war elements of that government also being among the most misogynistic in ways that, again, impact all women in the country, like we see with this nationalist and Islamist agitation against the Istanbul Convention. So that's a really important point about how this all relates to a variety of different issues. So Treefa, same question in terms of what the US can do to really implement these WPS and gender policy frameworks to help support Kurdish women's efforts for peace and stability.
Thank you. Well, yes, in fact, this is a important plan, and it's something that the KRG is working very actively on. In fact, the KRG has its own national action plan in line with the UN resolution 1325. And I think we're probably the first sub-state entity to create a national plan in line with the UN resolution. So I'll answer it 2 ways. One, on the first part, what can the US do? I think the US has to have an active participation in coordinating and in partnering with local organizations, governments, entities on the implementation of a plan. Since we do have a plan now in the KRG, I think that coordination is happening on the ground, which is a positive development. In addition to that, I think education is key. Educating the members of the society, as well as civil servants within the ministries and in the governments, the public. It's, a multifaceted effort. It can't be just a government led effort. So it takes both public and private partnerships, to make this happen. And lastly, inclusiveness, so that, as I said, it's both a public-private partnership that includes civil society, government leaders, and non-state actors. So the KRG National Action Plan actually has 3 fundamental principles: participation, protection, and prevention. And in that, we're ensuring that women are not just, passive recipients of any of these efforts, that they're actually active participants in peace building processes, and for the KRG to not merely work in increasing, the number of women in positions or in businesses or in government, but that there are a thoughtful, meaningful participation of women that not just includes them being at the table, but they actually have like a voice that is contributing to the implementation of any plans. So as I mentioned earlier, our High Council of Women in Development has been working very closely with the UN, I think 30 civil society organizations, 20 ministries, foreign governments, to bring this resolution to reality in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. And in fact, I will just announce here on this panel that I am planning to host a women delegation from the Kurdistan region here in Washington next month. And we are going to be showcasing the Women's Peace Initiative agenda in Congress. And I hope that in the week that they are here, we will be able to engage some of you and some of the attendees at events or at meetings, hearing directly from the leaders on the ground what they're doing in regards to this agenda. So stay tuned for our notices on that, but it will be at the end of July. And I hope that us taking the initiative to sort of highlight this to the American Congress and the administration, as well as the academia and the think tank world, will promote further collaborations on this important effort. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad. Thank you for choosing this forum to let us all know about that. I think our listeners here are some of the people who will be very interested, and I think that that's an incredible initiative. I remember reading that Iraq was the first Middle Eastern country to adopt a national action plan on women, peace, and security, and thinking, I bet Kurdish women had something to do with that. So that's really amazing news. And now, Sinam, again, in that you also are someone who've engaged with WPS. What do you think the US needs to do to really implement that framework in the context of supporting Kurdish women's efforts?
So, the United Nations also has a resolution for 1325, the peace and security for the women. Actually, we worked with that with many of the official organizations in the United Nations regarding this issue. But the difficulty is, as you are a non-state actor, this is the difficulty, how to be involved in the United Nations, actually. So first of all, that here last year, like this month in June, I think the State Department, they held a conference about the peace, women, peace and security here in Washington, and I attend that conference. Of course, there was a lot of people from women from all over the world. They attended that conference. Most of them, they are representing their state. I was the only one that is non-state, which is actor, representing my people there. But I think it is very important that the United States support and empower, like through programs, through projects in the northeast Syria, to empower the women, to support and fund the women organization in northeast Syria. For instance, by making workshop, by educating more and more there, having some conferences for the women there. It's so important that we have this international support for our people there. So as the women, they are ready. They are ready to do, they are ready to work, but we need the more support from the international parts. So especially the United States with their program, the Women, Peace and Security. I think that the women in northeast Syria, they could bring peace to to northeast Syria are the women who fought against ISIS. If they are not there, you will not see peace. You will see all the region under the control of ISIS. So I think the women, they are ready, but we need more support and fund for such organization. For instance, we have Women Council, we have the Women House. The Women House, they are playing at the level of the bottom a very good role in solving many social problems for the women, to bring peace to the family, for instance. This is important, but they are neglected, these people. So we need to support such people in order to bring peace also. Peace not only in the conflict region, it is in the society also. If you have peace in your society, in your family, you will have also peace later on, around you. So I think it is very important to have the women in northeast Syria to be trained, educated through the workshop, through conferences, through maybe funding this organization. That's very important. Because the project in northeast Syria, it is not only for Kurdish women or for all the women in all over Syria. And this is most important, that the women in Syria, they can play a very great role in bringing peace in the negotiation at the table. That's what we need. So I think United States still need to support this organization, and maybe also to invite some women from their region to the United Nations, to conferences there, to participate there. For instance, we have here many awards for the Women Peace and Security Award here. Why don't we have women from northeast Syria to get this award, to encourage the women, because really they played a very vital role in bringing peace to the society there. So this is one of the issues I think we discuss it. I mean, with the many here with the think tank centers, institutes, we discussed that, and I discussed with the USIP also some of the women there about these issues. But still we have, as I mentioned, a little bit challenges, so we need the support from the UN and United States, especially for our organization there.
Wonderful suggestions. And as we conclude this portion of the panel, I do want to thank all of you for your brilliant observations and recommendations for how these existing policy frameworks can be leveraged to support the work that, again, I think it's important to reiterate that women on the ground are already doing. You know, a lot of times in Washington, when people ask about women's issues internationally, about any kind of human rights issue, you know, the criticism is always, oh, well, we don't do nation building, but this really isn't nation building. Kurdish women in Kurdistan and in these regions are building their nation themselves, as all three of you have shown so eloquently in the work that they do, whether fighting for freedom, whether pursuing economic development, whether engaging in diplomacy and everything in between. They're building their nation themselves, and it's just smart for national security and stability and peace in the region for international actors to support them in what it is that these women are already doing to help them further intensify and expand those efforts. So we've got a good set of questions here in the chat. I'd like to start with one from an anonymous attendee, as I think that this is something that you can all speak to well. How can young women, particularly those who are studying politics, best prepare themselves for a career in diplomacy and international relations? And what advice would you give to those aspiring to make a meaningful impact in this field? And I'll just add on to this that when I shared this event with our interns and, you know, newly emerging research fellows, some young Kurdish American women and women in Kurdistan as well. They were really excited to see the three of you. So I think it's great to start with this question.
I guess
Do you want us to go in order or anybody answer?
Anyone can answer.
If you don't mind, Ceylan, since I can maybe talk from experience, having grown up here, and I was a student of politics as well. So my best advice is remain open and flexible to choices that you make that will not necessarily lead you or you will think is what your dream job is. I think internships are a great way to get started, in addition to your educational studies, and having a variety of experience, both with if you're able to, within like a government role, non-government role, in the NGO world. I think all of that gives you really great perspectives on sort of how politics and diplomacy works, because it's not just a one-sided path. It's not just government only. And having that diversity, I think, makes you a more attractive candidate in your hopefully long career in this field. So my best advice is, while you're studying, also be very thoughtful about where you want to do your internships. Diversify yourself so that you're not pigeonholed into even doing just Kurdish politics. Learn about the rest of the world. That's also important, perspective. And be patient and flexible, that your career might take turns that, you might not expect. But I think keeping an open mind, and, lastly, be passionate about what you do, because it will be very evident to people when you talk. And the more, invested you are, the more passion you have for whatever it is that you're working on, will be very impactful on whoever that audience is that you're trying to message to. So, and for all of those Kurdish American students in the United States, the KRG mission here is always open for internships. I am a big supporter of the youth and want to empower them, and will hopefully in the near future work on some special projects and programming, because I think they are our future, and I think they have a powerful voice in America to advocate for Kurdistan. So that's my advice.
That's wonderful. Either of Ceylan, Sinem, you want to add on to that?
I would like to, say that the new generation or the youth, they are the future of our people, our country. So it is so important that this new generation will be more educated, and to support them in this education. Maybe we'll have some programs in educating them. Maybe we have conferences for the youth to encourage them more and more. This needs to be encouraged. If you encourage this youth and the young people, whether men or women, I think they will be, good actors in the future. The other one is, again, I will come to the economic side. The young people, they need to see the economy also, as long as with the politics or whatever, if they want to work in the politics sector. So they need to have also that economy. If you provide them with the job, and even with the other also education about the politics, about the diplomacy, I think we will be successful in that. Through building their capacity, building their capacity in Northeast Syria. I'm talking about the region there, and through also sending them to attend many conferences, international conferences, to open their eyes and mind to what is going on in the world, encourage them to work more and more. This is what happened actually. In the beginning of my career, I was working with the women issues. I used to gather most of the women for instance, in Afrin that time, even before the war, just to educate them about their rights, about the social things. And they were very happy. I didn't expect that a lot of women, they will come when I invite them. So about 50 women, they gathered in my house that time, and they were asking many questions. Many of them, they were young. So still the young people in our country, you have to educate them. You have to support them. You have to train them. So for that, I think each diplomat maybe can have a young man or woman beside with him working as an internship, as Ms. Treefa mentioned. Internship is good also for them to get some experiences. And for the young people, I would like to say, things is not coming just like that to be once as an ambassador. It will not work. Now we can see many ambassadors in all over the world as a woman, but it doesn't work like that. You know, it takes you time and efforts and a lot of patience, as mentioned by Treefa. You need to be patient. You have, because you could not reach to the high position unless you go through many steps, one by one. And in each steps, you will face a lot of difficulties, a lot of challenges. You have to be ready for that. You should not give up in the first step. Oh, that is very difficult, I will not continue. No, I think the young people now, either men or women, they are a little bit impatient. They want to get something just at once, you know. That is not working. So it needs to be patient, to not give up at any obstacles when you face it at the first time. You have to continue. You have to struggle more and more in order to reach to whatever you want. And this is what we need. We need to train a good women and men in the diplomacy or in politics in order to lead in the future, maybe the politicals and governing or the political position in the future. That's too important for us also. Thank you so much.
Well, I think on that inspirational note, as we are at 7:15, and I do want to respect the time of our guests and our panelists, we'll be wrapping this panel up. I want to say thank you to all three of you for joining and sharing your extremely valuable experiences and insights. You know, personally, as someone who is passionate about self-determination, human rights, gender equality, hearing women like all of you talk about how you're actually implementing this is something that makes me very happy. And then in my academic capacity as a researcher, like I said in the introduction, for security and stability in the region, you know, including Kurdish perspectives and including women's perspectives is just common sense if we look at the statistics and we look at the history. And I think we've learned a lot here today about how to do that. So once again, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our audience as well. I appreciated all of your wonderful questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but I do want to recognize that there were 2 comments in there about ideas of greater unification and coordination of Kurdish women's efforts and things like perhaps Kurdish WPS conferences. And as the director of research at KPI, I love it when my audience comes up with better ideas than I have, because that gives us ideas for what we as a research institute can do to implement and, you know, amplify what people are thinking and what women in all 4 parts of Kurdistan are already doing. So amazing suggestions. Hopefully we'll have a little bit more to say about what we're going to do in that capacity. And I want to leave everyone with that. This has been a panel on Kurdish women diplomats advancing peace and security, hosted here by the Kurdish Peace Institute out of our local office in Kamishlo, Rojava. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us. Thank
Thank
you.